My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm 34 years old. At my family's reunion last summer, my Uncle Richard stood up in front of everyone, cousins, aunts, uncles, my own parents, and said the words that would change everything. "You're not one of us anymore, Marcus. You never really were." 63 people. That's how many family members were there. And not a single one defended me. But what my uncle didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had spent the last 6 months quietly gathering documents, emails, and bank statements that would expose the truth about who was really betraying this family. And I was about to reveal everything. This is the story of how one sentence at a family reunion led to the complete unraveling of 20 years of lies, and how I made sure everyone knew exactly who the real fraud was. Let me take you back to understand how we got here. I grew up as the youngest of 3 kids in a pretty typical middle-class family. My dad, Thomas, worked in insurance. My mom, Linda, was a school teacher. We lived in a modest house in suburban Cleveland, and money was always tight. Not poverty level, but we knew what it meant to budget. My older brother Daniel was the golden child, star athlete, straight A's. Everything came easy to him. My sister Rebecca was the social butterfly, popular, charming, always knew how to work a room. And then there was me. I was the quiet one. The one who spent weekends reading instead of playing sports. The one who asked too many questions. The one who my parents would introduce with a slightly apologetic tone. And this is Marcus, he's very smart. Like being smart was something to apologize for. But the real center of our family wasn't my immediate household. It was my Uncle Richard. Richard Chen was my father's older brother, and in our family, he was basically royalty. He owned a successful car dealership, 3 locations across Ohio, and he never let anyone forget it. Every family gathering was at his house. Every major decision went through him. Every time someone needed money, they went to Uncle Richard. He paid for my cousin Jennifer's wedding. He co-signed my cousin Brandon's house. He loaned my parents $15,000 when our roof needed repairs. And he held it over all of us like a crown. "Family takes care of family," he'd say, always with that smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. That's what the Chens do. My dad worshipped him. Absolutely worshipped him. Growing up, I watched my father shrink himself to fit into whatever Richard wanted. Sunday dinners at Richard's house. Dad would cancel our plans. Richard needed help at the dealership. Dad would take vacation days to go work for free. It made me sick. But here's what made it worse. I was the only one who seemed to notice. When I was 16, I asked my dad why Uncle Richard always made him feel small. My father didn't speak to me for 3 days. When I was 22 and fresh out of college, I declined to work at Richard's dealership because I'd gotten a job offer in Chicago at a tech startup. Richard called it a slap in the face to family. My dad called it the biggest mistake of your life. My mom cried and said I was breaking the family apart. I moved to Chicago anyway. And for the next 12 years, I was the black sheep, the one who abandoned the family. The one who thought he was too good for the family business. Every phone call home, every holiday visit, there was this undercurrent of disappointment. But here's the thing they didn't know. That tech startup, I was employee number 12. I worked 70-hour weeks, lived in a studio apartment the size of a closet, and ate ramen for 2 years straight. And when the company went public in 2019, my stock options were worth $3.2 million. I didn't tell my family. I didn't post about it on social media. I just quietly sold half my shares, invested the rest, and kept living my normal life. Normal apartment, normal car, normal clothes. Because I had learned something important. In my family, having money meant Richard had power over you. And I didn't want him to have any power over me anymore. I thought I could just exist on the periphery. Show up for major events, keep things civil, live my life in Chicago. But then my grandmother died. Grandma May was the only person in my family who ever really saw me. While everyone else was fawning over Daniel's football trophies or Rebecca's prom photos, Grandma May would sit with me in her kitchen and ask me about books I was reading, ideas I was thinking about, dreams I had. "You're different, Marcus," she told me once when I was 14. Different isn't bad. Different is just waiting for the world to catch up. She died last November at 87. Peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was huge. She was beloved in the community. And of course, Uncle Richard handled everything. The service, the reception, the flowers. He stood at the podium and gave this long speech about family legacy and staying true to your roots. I watched from the back row. 3 days after the funeral, the family gathered at Richard's house for the reading of the will. Grandma May had been a school teacher her whole life, lived modestly, but she'd been smart with money. We all knew there'd be something to divide up. Richard's lawyer, yes, his personal lawyer, read the will. The house went to my dad and Richard to split. Her savings, about $80,000, was divided among all the grandchildren equally. Her jewelry to the granddaughters, her books to the local library. And then the lawyer said, and the remainder of the estate, including all investment accounts and holdings, to my grandson Marcus Chen, to be used as he sees fit. The room went silent. I looked up from my hands. I what? The lawyer looked at me. Mrs. Chen maintained a private investment portfolio that she managed herself. The current value is approximately $890,000. She's left it entirely to you, Mr. Chen. I couldn't breathe. My uncle's face turned purple. My dad looked like he'd been slapped. My mom started crying, not happy tears. That's impossible, Richard said, standing up. My mother would never. She wouldn't have that kind of money without telling us. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. According to her records, she began investing in 1987 and managed the portfolio independently. She was quite financially savvy, and she left all of it to him. My brother Daniel pointed at me like I was a stranger. He hasn't even been around. He left the family. Rebecca stood up too. This isn't fair. We've been here. We've been taking care of things. Marcus shows up twice a year and he gets everything. I felt like I was underwater. Grandma May left me almost $1 million. Why? Why me? But Richard just stared at me with this look I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. Of course, he finally said, his voice calm now. Of course, May left it to Marcus. He's always been responsible with money. This is actually good. Marcus will do right by the family with this. And I understood immediately. He thought he could control me with this. He thought this money would finally bring me back into the fold, back under his thumb. My dad grabbed my arm as I was leaving. You'll invest it wisely, right? Talk to Richard about it. He knows about these things. I'll think about it, Dad, I said. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't understand why Grandma May had done this. Not the money itself. She'd clearly been smarter than anyone gave her credit for, but why leave it all to me? 2 days later, I found out why. When I went to Grandma May's house to start sorting through her things, no one else had volunteered. Surprise, surprise. I found a letter taped to the bottom of her desk drawer. My hands shook as I opened it. My dear Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you're not too angry with your old grandma for stirring up trouble. I'm leaving you the money because you're the only one who doesn't need it, and because you're the only one who will use it for something real, not to prove something to someone else. But Marcus, there's something you need to know. Something I discovered 5 years ago that I didn't have the strength to confront. I'm sorry for putting this burden on you, but you're the only one I trust to handle it. Look in the blue box in my bedroom closet. Top shelf, behind the hat boxes. Everything you need is there. Your Uncle Richard is not who you think he is, and your father deserves to know the truth. I love you, my brilliant boy. Be brave. Grandma May. My heart was pounding as I went to her bedroom. Found the closet. Pulled down the blue box. Inside were folders. Manila folders stuffed with documents, printouts, bank statements. And as I started reading, my entire understanding of my family collapsed. Uncle Richard hadn't built his success alone. 23 years ago, when Richard first started his car dealership, Grandma May had given him $200,000, her entire life savings at the time, as seed money. Not a loan, a gift. Because he was her son and she believed in him. The documents showed the original bank transfer. Her handwritten note for Richard's dream. I believe in you. But that's not what Richard told everyone. He told the family, he told my dad, that he built everything from nothing. Self-made. Pull yourself up by bootstraps success story. And when the business took off, when Richard started making real money, Grandma May never asked for anything back. Never mentioned it. Just quietly watched her son become the family hero on the foundation she built for him. But it got worse. In 2008, when the recession hit, Richard's dealerships almost went under. He was leveraged too heavily, made bad investments. The whole thing was about to collapse. And he went to Grandma May again. The documents showed another transfer, $150,000. October 2008. With a note in her handwriting, "This is the last time. Please be more careful." Richard took the money, saved his business, never mentioned it to anyone. And this is where my hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the papers. In 2012, Richard had convinced my dad to invest $50,000 into expanding the business. Dad had scraped together everything, including taking out a second mortgage on our house. The investment forms were in the box, but Richard had never actually put my dad's name on any ownership papers. He'd taken the money, used it, and my dad owned exactly 0% of the dealership he'd helped save. Legally, my father had no claim to anything. There were more documents, years of them. Richard borrowing money from Grandma May for business expenses that turned into vacation homes and boats. Richard using my dad as free labor while paying actual employees. Richard telling the family he was helping with loans when really he was charging them interest, his own family, and collecting payments. The final document was a letter Grandma May had written but never sent. It was addressed to Richard. "Richard, I don't know who you've become. The boy I raised would never treat his brother like a servant, would never build a throne from other people's backs and pretend it was all your own hands that built it. I'm leaving my money to Marcus not to punish you, but because I know he won't let you continue this. He's the only one brave enough to tell the truth. You had my love, you had my money, you had every advantage, and you used it all to make yourself feel bigger by making everyone else feel small. I hope someday you understand what you've lost." She'd never sent it. She died with these secrets in a blue box, and now they were mine. I sat on my grandmother's bedroom floor and I cried. For her, for my dad, for all the years we'd all been playing our roles in Richard's show. But then I stopped crying, and I started making copies. For the next 6 months, I quietly built my case. I hired a forensic accountant to go through everything. Confirmed every dollar, every date, every transaction. I consulted with 3 different lawyers about the legality of what Richard had done. Turns out, what he'd done to my dad wasn't technically illegal, just morally bankrupt, but there were other issues. Tax implications, possible fraud, and how he'd reported certain business dealings. I gathered everything into a single folder. Everything. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my dad, not my siblings, not even my girlfriend. Because I knew if I told anyone, word would get back to Richard. And Richard would spin it. He'd find a way to make himself the victim, make me the villain, and everyone would believe him because they always believed him. So I waited, and then the invitation came, the annual Chen family reunion. Richard's lake house. Last weekend of July. Mandatory attendance for all family members. Perfect. I RSVP'd yes. The reunion was exactly what you'd expect. Richard's massive lake house, catered food, a rented bounce house for the kids, the whole production. 63 people showed up. The entire extended family. Richard held court like always, telling stories, making jokes, reminding everyone subtly and not so subtly about all the things he'd done for various family members over the years. I showed up with a backpack. Inside, printed copies of every document. 63 copies, 1 for each person. My girlfriend had asked me if I was sure about this. "Once you do this, you can't take it back," she'd said. I know, I told her. The reunion was in full swing when Richard announced it was time for the family meeting. This was tradition. After we ate, Richard would gather everyone in the main living room and talk about family business. Usually it was updates on who was doing what, sometimes asking for group input on family decisions. This year, he had a special announcement. Everyone settled into seats. Kids were sent to play outside. This was adults only. Richard stood at the front of the room, and I knew what was coming before he even started talking. "I want to talk about something important," Richard began. "About family loyalty. About what it means to be a Chen." My stomach tightened. We've had a loss this year. May was the heart of his family, and she left us too soon. He paused, letting the moment breathe. But she also left us with a reminder about what matters. She left her estate to be managed responsibly, to honor her legacy. He looked directly at me. Marcus received the bulk of May's estate. And I've talked to Thomas about this. He gestured to my dad, who nodded. I think it's time Marcus came back to the family properly. Not just visits. Really came back. My brother Daniel spoke up. What does that mean? Richard smiled. I'm proposing that Marcus invest his inheritance into the family business. Become a real partner. Put his money where his roots are. Show that he's finally ready to be one of us again. The room erupted in murmurs. Some supportive, some skeptical. My mom looked at me with hope in her eyes. My dad nodded encouragingly. And Richard just smiled that smile. What do you say, Marcus? Richard asked. Are you ready to finally be a real part of this family? 63 people stared at me. I stood up slowly. Uncle Richard, I said, my voice steady. Can I ask you a question first? He spread his arms magnanimously. Of course. Where did you get the money to start your first dealership? His smile flickered. Just for a second. I worked hard. Saved. Made smart investments. Right. Smart investments. I opened my backpack. So you didn't get $200,000 from Grandma, May in 1999? The room went quiet. Richard's face hardened. That was a private family matter. A gift, I continued, pulling out the first stack of documents. Not a loan. A gift. Her entire life savings. Which you've never acknowledged. Not once. My dad stood up. Marcus, what are you? And in 2008. I kept going, my hand starting to shake but my voice strong. When the business was about to go under, Grandma gave you another $150,000. Also never repaid. Also never acknowledged. Richard's jaw clenched. You have no right to go through. And Dad, I turned to my father. Do you remember investing $50,000 in 2012? My dad nodded slowly. Yes, of course. Richard said. Did you ever see ownership papers? Silence. Did you ever receive profit-sharing statements? My dad's face went pale. Richard said. He said it was being reinvested. Dad, I said gently, you own 0% of the dealership. You never did. Richard took your money, your mortgage money, and he never made you a partner. The room exploded. People shouting. Questions. Denials. Richard's face was purple. That's a lie. That's a goddamn lie. I have the documents, I said quietly. And I reached into my backpack and pulled out all 63 packets. I have everything. Every transaction. Every loan. Every time someone in this family gave Richard money, and he either never paid it back or charged you interest, his own family, or told you the money was going to one thing and used it for another. I started walking around the room, handing packets to people. Don't you dare! Richard started toward me. In this packet, I said louder, you'll find a full accounting of every dollar Grandma May gave to Richard. You'll find proof of the $50,000 Dad invested without any legal ownership. You'll find loan documents where Richard charged Aunt Susan 8% interest on money to help with her mortgage. You'll find evidence that Richard used business expense money for a boat he keeps in Florida. I handed a packet to my dad. He opened it with shaking hands. You'll also find, I continued, copies of a letter Grandma May wrote before she died. About why she left her money to me. About what she wanted me to do with it. I handed Richard his packet last. She wanted the truth told, I said, looking him in the eye. She wanted everyone to know that the empire you built, the one you used to make yourself the king of this family, you built it on her back. On Dad's back. On all of us. Richard grabbed my shirt. You ungrateful little. Don't. My dad's voice cut through the chaos. He was reading the documents, tears streaming down his face. Richard, don't. My uncle let me go. My father looked up at his brother. Is this true? All of it. Richard's face crumpled, and for just a moment I saw something human there. But then it hardened again. You don't understand business, Thomas. I did what I had to do to keep everything afloat. To keep the family afloat. You made Dad take a second mortgage, I said. And you never gave him ownership. You used him like free labor for 12 years. My uncle looked around the room, at all the faces staring at him. His siblings. His cousins. His own children. You don't understand, he said again, but his voice was smaller now. My dad stood up, walked over to Richard, and for a second I thought he might hug him, might forgive him on the spot. Instead, my father took the envelope out of his packet, the one containing the unsigned ownership agreement Richard had never filed, and he ripped it in half. "You're right, Richard," my dad said quietly. "I don't understand business, but I understand family. And you forgot which one mattered more." He turned to me. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. For all the years I made you feel like you weren't enough because you didn't want to be part of this." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. And then Uncle Richard said the words. "You're not one of us anymore, Marcus." His voice was venomous now. "You never really were. A real Chen doesn't betray family like this. You're dead to me. Dead to all of us." He looked around the room, waiting for support. Nobody spoke. My cousin Jennifer, whose wedding he'd paid for, stood up. "Uncle Richard, I think you should leave. This is my house," he shouted. "And this is our family," my Aunt Susan said, standing too. "And I think we need to talk without you here." One by one, people stood. Not in support of Richard. In support of something else. Truth, maybe. Uncle Richard grabbed his keys and stormed out. His wife and kids followed, his son shooting me a look I couldn't quite read. After he left, the room stayed quiet for a long time. Then my dad sat down next to me. "The money," he said. "Your inheritance. Don't invest it in anything for us. Use it for you. That's what May wanted. Dad! I mean it, son. I spent too many years teaching you the wrong things about what matters. I'm not going to make that mistake again." The weeks after the reunion were chaos. The family fractured into camps. Some sided with Richard, mostly people who still owed him money or felt indebted. But most people were just angry. Angry at the lies. Angry at how long it had been going on. Angry at themselves for not seeing it. My dad filed a lawsuit against Richard for the $50,000 plus 12 years of labor. The lawyers said it was a complicated case, but they'd try. Richard's wife filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Turned out she'd found some additional documents about assets he'd hidden from her too. The dealerships are struggling now. A lot of family members who worked there quit. Richard had to hire actual employees at actual salaries. My siblings and I are talking more. It's awkward. There's years of resentment to work through. But we're trying. And my dad and I have dinner once a week now. Video calls when I can't make it back to Cleveland. He asks about my work, my life, my girlfriend. Really asks. Really listens. He told me last month, "I thought being a good father meant teaching you to fit in. I was wrong. I should have been teaching you to stand up." As for me and the money, I started a scholarship fund in Grandma May's name. For kids who are the different ones in their families. The ones who ask too many questions. The ones who are told they're too smart for their own good. I kept enough for myself to be comfortable. Invested the rest. And I never, ever let Richard have power over me again. 3 months after the reunion, I got a letter from Richard. It was short. "You destroyed this family. I hope you're proud." I wrote back. "I didn't destroy it. I showed everyone what was already broken. What you broke. Big difference." I never heard from him again. Looking back now, I understand what Grandma May was trying to do. She wasn't trying to punish Richard. She was trying to free the rest of us. For 23 years, we'd all been living in a story Richard told us about who we were. About what family meant. About loyalty and obligation and sacrifice. And we believed it because it was easier than questioning it. But Grandma May saw the truth. And she knew I was the only one stubborn enough, or maybe just distant enough, to blow the whole thing up. People ask me if I regret it. If I wish I just kept quiet, taken the money, and moved on with my life. And honestly, not for a second. Because now when I go home for the holidays, I don't feel like I'm playing a part. I don't feel like I have to shrink myself to fit into someone else's story about who I should be. I'm just Marcus, the quiet one who reads too much and asks too many questions. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. My family doesn't revolve around Uncle Richard anymore. We don't have mandatory reunions at his lake house. We don't check with him before making decisions. We're figuring out what we are without him. And it's messy, eh? And it's harder, but it's real. Last week, my dad called me. "I was cleaning out the garage," he said. "And I found some old photos of you as a kid. You were always reading. Always in your own world." "Yeah," I said. "I remember. I thought there was something wrong with you," he admitted. "I thought I needed to fix you. Make you more like Daniel. More More like what I thought you should be. He paused. But you were never broken, Marcus. You were just waiting for the rest of us to catch up. I remembered Grandma May saying almost the same thing when I was 14. Different isn't bad. Different is just waiting for the world to catch up. Thanks, Dad, I said. No, he replied. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth, even when it cost you. After we hung up, I pulled out the last letter Grandma May had left me. The one that was just for me, not for the family. Marcus, by the time you read this, you'll have made your choice. And knowing you, you chose the hard thing instead of the easy thing. I'm proud of you, not because you're smart or successful or because you made the right choice. I'm proud because you were always yourself, even when the world told you to be someone else. That's the bravest thing a person can do. Live a good life, my brilliant boy. And remember, family is the people who see you, really see you, not the people who share your last name. All my love, Grandma May. I framed that letter. It hangs in my apartment in Chicago. And whenever I doubt myself, whenever I wonder if I should have just kept quiet and kept the peace, I read those words. Family is the people who see you. Grandma May saw me. My dad is learning to see me now. And Uncle Richard, he only ever saw what he wanted me to be. That's the difference. So that's my story. The family reunion where I burned every bridge with a truth bomb and walked away with no regrets. Some people think I'm the villain, the ungrateful nephew who aired dirty laundry and destroyed the family peace. Other people think I'm the hero, the truth teller who finally stood up to a tyrant. Honestly, I don't think I'm either. I'm just someone who got tired of pretending. And if that makes me not one of them anymore, good. Because I'd rather be myself and alone than be someone else surrounded by people. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've got a family member who makes everyone feel small so they can feel big, maybe it's time to stop playing along. You might be surprised who's been waiting for someone to speak up.